Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Brazos Valley, or Brazos UU for short. My name is Pam Johnson. My pronouns are she and her, and I am your worship assistant today. Welcome visitors, freethinkers, and free spirits. We are a welcoming congregation, which means we celebrate and welcome all people of any sexual orientation, race, age, gender identity, ability, immigration status, or belief. So, whoever you are, wherever you have come from, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome and encouraged here. Honoring the value of spiritual freedom and diversity, we have no statement of doctrine. As a covenanted community, we agree to a set of principles that we all follow as we search for truth and how it applies to ethical living. Unitarian Universalism is a faith of covenant, not creed. This means that Unitarian Universalists seek and use wisdom from many diverse sources. We encourage everyone to visit our website, brazos-uu.org, which is our digital home in this time of great transition in our world. During this time of pandemic and in the midst of our planned building project, the website and these weekly services are our only home. As you can see there, the Brazos UU is always open to new directions, ideas, and partnerships. To find out more, you can always join our email list for updates from our weekly eCast and our monthly newsletter. And you can also find us on social media by searching UUCBV. For information about this, you can write our administrator at admin, that's ADMIN, at brazos-uu.org, which you will see on your screen now. If you might like to contribute your musical talents, if you have a great story to share about your life's journey, or if you have a passion for social justice, we would love to hear from you. If you are interested in getting involved, you can find plenty of information on our website. To join a meeting and have your voice heard by our members, you can find links to all of our meetings on our interactive website calendar at brazos-uu.org-calendar, which you will see on your screen now. Our service today is about the worth and dignity of all human beings and the interconnected web of which we are all a part.
Our call to worship today and our service today is about pride and looking at the world through a queer eye. I don't use the term queer to mean strange or odd, as some dictionaries still define it, or to be offensive to the LGBTQ plus community at all. I use it out of a sense of pride in being unique and true to oneself. I use the term queer as an umbrella term for sexual and gender minorities who are not exclusively heterosexual or are not cisgender. Originally meaning strange, peculiar, or odd, queer came to be used pejoratively against those with same-sex desires or relationships in the late 19th century. Now the word queer is being reclaimed by the non-straight, non-cisgender communities as an umbrella term for those who simply don't fall into the prescribed definitions of normal. I personally take pride in being out of the norm, and in a more positive light, I take pride in being unique. Who wants to be normal anyways? In a more traditional American society, normal means to fit into a predefined set of parameters that have been propagated for decades, if not centuries. Predefined and prescribed parameters set forth by someone else just don't work for me. In my own words, normal is boring. Normal misses out on the beauty of being a diamond in the rough. Much like our small church, a liberal and progressive congregation that continues to serve as an oasis for progressives in a red state full of conservatism, though I would argue Texas is more of a non-voting state, let us take pride in being not normal for the area we're in. Let us take pride for our church's founding in the mid-50s, during a period of American history typically associated with a narrow and stereotypical view of what it means to be an American. I'm reminded of song lyrics that say, "Little boxes on the hillside, little boxes made of ticky-tacky, little boxes on the hillside, little boxes all the same." Let us be proud that we are not the same, and that we don't fit neatly into little boxes. Let us be proud that our original church building, that was purchased in the 60s around the time those lyrics were written, served our community for decades as an oasis and a beacon. One great example is that we hosted the first desegregated kindergarten in this area. We need to be proud about that and brag a little bit. I think the phrase is loud and proud, which is fitting for today's service honoring queer communities. Let us be proud of our small church continuing to bend the arc of the universe towards justice for decades. Let us be proud that our small church raised the second largest amount of money during the Crop Hunger Walk this year, outdoing churches that are larger, more popular, and then have more money and people flowing through them. We did that, and we should be proud. Let us be proud that our UU faith and religion challenges the very norms of what it means to be of faith or to be religious. I take pride in surprising those who know me by saying that I am a voting member, recently a board member, and now a staff member of a church. I take pride that I'm able to use my creative talents, including musical and visual arts, not only to help this church, but to rescue and carry it through a pandemic of all things. I take pride that after growing up thinking my talents might not be able to pay the bills, that those preconceived notions were wrong, and that I can be true to myself and support my family. I recall telling some of my closest friends that I've become heavily involved with the church since my wife and I moved to the Brazos Valley. And upon explaining that it was a UU church, one of them said, "Well, that's not really a church, so it doesn't count." My friend wasn't entirely wrong in their statement. The typical use of the word church implies a building for public Christian worship. And I take pride in reclaiming that word to redefine in our own way, particularly when considering we don't even have a physical building to gather in. Even if there weren't a global pandemic happening, it shows that the word church is not about a building at all, but about the people, the congregation, and the shared mission we propagate that keeps it alive. Let us take pride, in a largely ironic way, that we are aligned with the Pope, of all people that could be an ally of UUs and the queer community. Pope Francis called for the passage of civil union laws for same-sex couples, which is a major departure from the position held by the Vatican's doctrinal office. Homosexuals have a right to be part of the family, the pontiff said in a documentary about his life. They're children of God and have a right to a family. Nobody should be thrown out or be made miserable because of it. I take pride in our church supporting KEOS 89.1 FM, a local community radio station that is supported by volunteers and donors just like our church. KEOS hosts a show called This Way Out, which reminded me that dozens of LGBTQ plus candidates were voted into office in the historic US 2020 elections. There, I heard the victorious voices of many of the winners in a comprehensive roundup, plus the queer supportive president and vice president elect, and music to celebrate by. They also mentioned their website, thiswayout.org, which helped me put together part of this service. Let us be proud. Let us be queer. Let us be both a beacon and an oasis. Let us be that diamond in the rough. And now, let us worship.
I invite you to light your own chalice if you have one, as I light our chalice today. Please say our chalice lighting words with me. We light the chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, as a beacon of hope for all who seek justice, dignity, and compassion, and in celebration of a life of truth and meaning we share together. Now, all please join saying our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
Choice by Alex Capitan. I want to talk about choice. I want to talk about the fact that just because someone who is out to destroy you says you chose to be the way you are, does not mean the path of best protection is to counter with, "No, I didn't. It's not a choice. I was born this way, and I've always been this way." Is who I am, my sexuality, my gender, a deep and real part of me, close to my soul? Yes. Are there choices involved? Of course there are. I have made one choice after another to feel more at ease, more vibrant, more alive. I chose to change my name. I chose to allow myself to open to the idea that I might be attracted to women. I chose to open myself to the idea that, first of all, genderqueer people exist. Second, that I might be one of them. And third, that I might be attracted to other genderqueer folks. After all of this, I chose to remain open to the idea that I was still attracted to men and might actually like being in a relationship with one. If I hadn't made these choices, I never could have lived into my full, authentic self. And you know, there are some things that are more attractive to me than gender. I'm attracted to feminists. I'm attracted to queer people and radicals. I'm attracted to people who are assertive and like to make decisions. Is any of this biologically hardwired into me? Probably not. Is all of it impacted by culture? Definitely. But do I have every right to pursue relationships and experiences with whoever I want because it's my body and my sexuality? Yes. It doesn't matter who I seek intimacy, ecstasy, joy, or camaraderie with. Sexuality is sacred. Love is sacred. And I deserve and demand the right to full control over my body and what I do with it and who I share it with. So anyone, if anyone, ever tries to invalidate you or the way you seek intimacy by saying it's just a choice, tell them choice is sacred. Tell them the inherent right of every person to have full authority and agency over choices they make about their lives and their bodies is a spiritual and human imperative. That there is a word for this, and it's called liberation. That there is nothing more worth fighting for. Tell them that in your faith tradition, we don't love people despite their differences or because they can't help being different. We love people because of their differences and because diversity enriches our world and our communities. Tell them that in the final reckoning, there is only one choice that will be judged, and that's their choice. Tell them you hope they choose love.
Take a moment to introduce this next video, which is one of many videos by Bo, a, quote, Southern journalist who is fed up with a lack of common sense. I find a lot in common with that statement, and I was fortunately introduced to his YouTube channel by a friend a few weeks ago as I was working on this service. When I asked him if I could use this video as part of church service, he responded, always. So you're likely to see more of his videos in future services because he has some powerful thoughts to share with the online community. Without further ado, here is Bo the Fifth Column.
So today we're going to talk about how to shift societal thought. It's a very common theme on this channel that to change society, you don't have to change the law, you have to change the way people think. And in some cases, it's a whole lot easier to shift the way people think than it is to get legislation passed. With that in mind, I'm going to tell you about a message I received. In relevant part, the body of it starts with, "I'd love to see you put your preferred pronouns in your bio on Twitter." What? Why on earth would I need to do that? Look at me. Nobody is going to look at me and mistake, oh, that's the whole point, isn't it? Yeah. As it stands right now, the societal norm is to not state your preferred pronouns, to say whether you prefer to be called he or she or whatever. The idea, the common way of doing it is to just look at the person and guess, right? And that's why nobody would think to look at me and say she, because I fit very neatly inside the he box, right? Identifying your pronouns is something that is currently pretty specific to a certain demographic of people, to a certain group. And it's yet another thing that identifies them. It's something else that is out of the norm of current societal thought that can be used to other them in some way. To change this, you need people who have no obvious reason to state their preferred pronoun to do it, because then it's not something that is specific to that demographic. It's just a thing that everybody does. This is something that is ridiculously simple to do, that over time will shift the way society views this. It won't be something that is specific, that is out of the norm. It's just an everyday occurrence. When I tweeted about it, because I was like, this never would have occurred to me. Thanks for pointing it out. Somebody else brought something else up. It also kind of acts like a flag. It acts like a flag or a bumper sticker. If you have that in your profile, it's safe to assume that you are not going to be opposed to the people who currently do that, to the people who are stereotyped with this request. If you have that in your profile, it's kind of like saying, hey, friendly space here. And it makes sense. This is one of those things that it doesn't take anything for me to do it. It doesn't take anything for you to do it. But there are some people who do not fit nicely, neatly, perfectly into those little boxes, that widespread use of this can help them feel more accepted, can help them feel more included. And it's harder for people to other them with this if there's a whole bunch of people doing it, because it's not a practice that then is specifically associated with them. It's just something that occurs. It's a good example of how little actions can, over time, shift the way society looks at an issue that today is very divisive. 15, 20 years from now, probably won't be. Probably won't be a big deal at all. And I would imagine that by the time it's all said and done, it won't matter. It will get to the point where we don't look at somebody and assume anything about their gender role based on their appearance. That's something that I would imagine is going to occur probably within my lifetime. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.
And now, let us join together to share our joys and concerns. We know there are many joys, sorrows, and concerns among us. Please express any joy or sorrow that you wish to share with everyone in the chat box at this time. And let us hold in our hearts any unspoken words. Let us be better allies of our LGBTQ neighbors, friends, and family. Let us reflect upon ourselves and how we can be more inclusive. Let us consider and lift up those struggling with their identity, questioning their own sexuality, or struggling with others who may not understand and love them for who they truly are. Let us also lift up all those who are suffering with the coronavirus, parents, grandparents, and family members, those who have concerns about their children's safety in school or at home, and to all essential workers who present themselves daily, possibly to harm. Let us remember that Black lives really do matter as we strive for justice, equity, and anti-racism. Let us stand on the right side of history, as have our UU ancestors before us, in key moments in time, such as the civil rights movement, when a UU minister lost their life in the fight for justice. If you haven't already, there's still time to express any joy or sorrow that you wish to share with everyone in the chat box. Let us now enter into a time of silence so we may reflect on these joys and sorrows. May it be so. If we were having worship service in person, this is the time when we would pass the basket. This church shares the proceeds of the offering plate donation each week to support important nonprofit organizations with which we work. We are proud to support the Brazos Valley Food Bank for November through January. If you wish to make an offering, you can mail your check, or for your convenience, you can donate online. On our homepage at brazos-uu.org, you can find our mailing address at the bottom, and at the top, you will see a Donate Here tab to click to see donation options. You will see how to donate in the chat box now. May each of us look into our hearts. How much love, how much generosity, how much faith, how much gratitude, how much hope is there? We give thanks for these gifts we have given, for those we receive, and for each other.
On a Holy Night in 1969 by Otto O'Connor. On a holy night in 1969 in an inn, also known as a bar, called the Stonewall Inn, a basement, which had no running water nor safe fire exits, queer people of many colors and kinds danced together, for it was the only place where they were allowed to dance, at least permitted to by the mafia who ran the inn. In those days, It was common practice for the police to frequent this inn, not to join in the dance, the underground celebration, but to send the dancers home and make arrests. When they would arrive, the lights would go on, the people would be lined up, and then all those in drag, all those who were trans, all those without proper identification, they were arrested and taken into custody. But on this holy night, that early morning of June 28th, the people said, "Not tonight," as they called to them to line up. The trans women refused to go, and as the police began to beat and arrest them, and as the people spilled out from the bar onto the street, Christopher Street, a crowd grew to watch. And then, as trans women, lesbians, and gay men were getting arrested, a yell came from the crowd, "Gay power!" And as a trans woman was shoved, she shoved back, and the crowd began throwing bottles at the wagon. And suddenly it erupted. For once the people didn't line up. For once the people said, "No more, we've had enough." It was almost as if that night, being pulled out of the darkness of the underground at Stonewall Inn one too many times, they said, "I'm ready to be seen." On this holy night, when the power of the oppressed rippled through the streets of New York, when queer people said no more, our world would never be the same. 50 years ago, it was illegal to be gay, to be trans, to dance and to love and to celebrate. Here we are celebrating 50 years later. Gay and straight together, queer and straight together, trans and cis together, all in this together. And so as we hear these stories of life and love and defiance and celebration, let us also remember and pay tribute to our movement ancestors. Many of them trans women of color who led the first rebellion that night. You see, Pride is a celebration of that anniversary, the anniversary of that riot at the Stonewall Inn in New York City, a holy night. So happy Pride. Welcome to this joyful celebration. Bring your whole selves, your gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer selves, your drag queen, butch and femme, cross-dressing, nail-painting, tutu-wearing selves, your genderqueer, gender-fluid, agender, pansexual, quilt bag selves, and all the other identities that are and will be. And let's have a celebration, because joy is a rebellion too. And this church is queer, queer and fabulous. Amen.
Oh, love, I pray that you break my heart so wide open that the whole world falls in. I confess I've been trying so hard to keep it all out, keep it all out. So love, I pray that you break my heart so wide open that the whole world falls in. I give up trying so hard to keep it all out, keep it all out. So love, fill me, breathe me to peace. strong enough. And when I need to hide, love, hold me in your grace until I feel safe. Then love, fill me, breathe me to pieces. Love, come fall into my heart, it's wide open. Doves fly out and doves come home, here to rest. In my heart is wide open, heart is wide open, my heart is wide open, heart is wide open, my heart is wide open. Fill me, breathe me to peace. Heart is wide open, my heart. Fill me, breathe me to peace. Heart is wide open, my heart is when I need to hide. Love, hold me in your grace. Heart is wide open, my heart is when I need to hide. Love, hold me in your grace. Fill me, breathe me to peace when I need to hide. Love, hold me in your grace. Heart is wide open, my heart is when I need to hide. Love, hold me in your grace. Heart is wide open, sweet love, I pray that you break my heart so wide open that the whole world falls in.
I can't believe this is happening. I'm giving a sermon? Anyone who knows me well knows that I'm not the sermon giving type of person, nor am I the church going type of person. If you were to go back in time and tell me that I'd be giving a sermon at a church in a few years, my former self would have immediately rejected the very notion of walking into a church, and certainly presumed that you were not right in the head and needed immediate help. I humorously recall the first time my wife and I walked into a church together, and after a few steps, she jokingly leaned over to me and said, was half expecting you to burst into flames when we walked in. Now look where I am. Life is weird. A close friend of mine, who's more like a brother from another mother, told me he was having a tough time the other day. The first thing I asked him was, how about I take your mind off of things for a moment and throw you for a loop by telling you that I'm writing a sermon? His response, through an audible gasp and slight chuckle I heard through the phone, was, consider the loop thrown. He chuckled a little more before he asked, so what's that all about? After a bit of conversation, I told him I would add it to my bucket list of unexpected life events, somewhere near the bullet point for fundraising for a church at a Jewish hallel performing a song by Black Sabbath. We both laughed and got off the phone feeling a bit lighter, but also a bit bewildered. Then it was time to actually start writing the sermon. When it first came to my attention that I was going to be leading this service, a service that was initially planned to be put together in collaboration with the Pride Community Center in College Station, Texas, I wasn't sure how to react. I think my initial response was a reflexive one, simply saying, sure, I can do it, out of the necessity to guarantee that we had a Sunday service at all, especially considering my new roles as a staff member, church leader, and technical support in such a wild and uncertain time that will certainly occupy a large portion of history books in the not-so-distant future. Soon after, it dawned on me that maybe I wasn't the right person to be putting on a service honoring the LGBTQ+ community. I'm a white cisgender male in a heterosexual marriage with children, after all, so I was having a hard time coming to terms with how, or even if, I could do the service any justice. And more importantly, do the LGBTQ+ community any justice. I chose to title this sermon Out with the Straight for many reasons, and the first is for the sake of being provocative. As a songwriter and lyricist, I spend a lot of time contemplating the meaning of words, the titles of things, the duality of meanings, and the multiple definitions that a single word can hold. I was fortunate enough to attend a Shakespeare class in high school, where our teacher would place a Shakespeare book on our desk and ask us to tell her everything we could about the book before we were even allowed to look inside or touch it at all. At the end of that semester, I had become exponentially more analytical of words, phrases, the books I read, the songs I listened to, and particularly of the titles of things. How fitting for this service, and considering that many scholars, as recently as 2020, argue that Shakespeare was bisexual, with some sonnets being, quote, definitely addressed to a male subject. I want to bring that level of analysis and address the multiple meanings of my own title, Out with the Straight, and focus on the words within this title. I've admittedly had to cut down quite a few of the words in my sermon here today to make it more timely, but I'll share the most pertinent of these words that I think should stay in the sermon. The first of those is that I had spoken with a few of my trans friends about this service, one of which I had worked with for a few years and had the chance to have some very candid conversations about our lives. They had a high school relationship, and as a transgender person born female, their own boyfriend first pointed out to them that they might be gay. We talked about what it was like for them to be lesbian, trying to get married in Texas, and how they had to travel to Austin to get an official marriage license. More recently, we talked about how their health insurance plan through their current job actually does cover transitioning, specifically hormone therapy, which was the most important for them and their spouse. I was elated by this news, as I'm sure they were too. And now I'm elated to see my friend growing facial hair that he is proud of and has been waiting for a long time. I'm elated to reference my friend by he, him, his pronouns, and I'm elated for his wife too. In speaking with him, I told my friend that I was thinking about titling this sermon Out with the Straight. And his response was, I think Out with the Straight paints an anti-hetero picture for some. Also, the LGBTQ community is about acceptance of all, but I don't know, that's just from personal experiences. I think you'll do great. You're super accepting of everyone. Another friend of mine who came out publicly as trans a few years ago was another person I sought help, advice, or any input at all about what I should do during the service. They expressed intrigue about the title of the sermon, responding with, "Oh, do tell." Once I briefly explained the multiple meanings of this title to both of these friends, they gave me positive and excited reactions, such as, "I like that a lot. Good stuff, man." I had to remove a few expletives, but it certainly showed genuine excitement and emboldened my own confidence to go forward. So without further ado, let me get into the analysis of this title, Out with the Straight. The first word I want to talk about is out, as in out and about or out of the closet. The latter is a phrase largely associated with someone who has publicly revealed their sexual orientation or gender identity. To be outed typically refers to a third party revealing publicly someone's hidden orientation or identity before they're ready, whether by accident or by intention. My response to the use of the word out in this way is to question who or what causes them to stay in or feel they have to keep who they are a secret in the first place. Not to say that I'm completely unaware of the typical factors that make someone want to stay in the closet until the time is right, but I want to probe the societal factors that continue to drive this narrative in our country and in our world and ask what I can do about it. I do enjoy a good coming out story, those moments when a person finally shares who they truly are with everyone in their lives and find a heartwarming welcome even among some of those they least expected it from. I empathize that a heavy burden is lifted off their shoulders and that they no longer had to stay in the closet or hide. Both of the friends I mentioned earlier had relatively positive coming out stories, as far as I know, finding acceptance and love from their family and friends. I recall the latter of these friends actually posting their coming out on Facebook, and a few longtime mutual friends of ours responded with a general sense of, "We know already," and proceeded to make lighthearted jokes and conversations of love and support that continue on Facebook to this day. I also know that for every good coming out story, there has to be many more bad coming out stories. This brings me to the second word I want to dissect, straight, as in straight and narrow, a phrase which implies that to deviate from being straight or walking a path outside what is considered normal is somehow immoral or wrong. In the popular TV show Queer Eye, which is a reboot of the original show called Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, I've seen more than one episode where one or more of the cast hints at how badly their coming out story really was. If you're not familiar with the show, I recommend you watch it. It's a team of 5 people in its basic premise that all have their own set of talents and are invited to revamp the life of a person who has been nominated by someone close to them, usually a friend or family, who thinks that particular person needs some outside help or a queer eye to give them new life, new skills, a new wardrobe, and a renewed sense of who they are. In one particular episode, the Fab Five, as the cast is known, were helping revamp and redesign a church for an older lady who dedicates more time to the church than to herself. Upon walking into the church, the designer of the group had to stop and take a deep breath. And as everyone noticed him struggling, he mentioned that it was his first time walking into a church since he came out. It brought tears all around and invoked hugs amongst the whole group right there on camera for the world to see. As the older lady they were helping gave him a tight hug, she softly said to him, "It's okay, sweetie. You are welcome and loved here at this church." That moment is one of the many heartfelt moments inherent in the show, and is a great example of what is inherently wrong with society and what society has labeled normal or straight for generations. This same cast member has also made prior references to how disconnected they are from their own family since they came out. It's for this reason I initially chose the provocative title of Out with the Straight. As my friend put it, it paints an anti-hetero picture for some, and that's part of my intention. As a cisgender white male in a heterosexual marriage, I feel it is my duty to make these challenges and to be provocative. I have my own qualms with the phrase straight and narrow because in my own way I've had my own experience of coming out and the struggles with revealing my true self that continue to this day. When I was 16, I was struggling to come to terms with the fact that I simply did not believe in hell, which was in turn casting doubt on everything I had been told by my family, my church pastor, and community leaders, and many people in society around me. By that point in my life, I'd spent half my life growing up in the Bible Belt, mostly in Texas, and the other half in the Midwest, living in Kansas. As you likely know, both the American South and the American Midwest have strong words about walking the straight and narrow path. At 16 years old, I refused to let my life be dictated by the fear of burning in hell for who I was or what I felt in my heart. I refused to be ruled by fear, and I continue to refuse the notion that I should be afraid of the devil, or as I like to put it, I'm not scared of the boogeyman anymore. The more I thought about it, the more I branched out and gained wisdom from all sources, especially through learning about other religions. The more I've come to realize my true self. I've come to accept the fact that if there is a God or creator of some sort, that God made me this way. God gave me this brain and this heart. I challenge those pushing a narrative of straight and narrow with these words. If God gave you a brain, why don't you use it? Why don't you ask the hard questions? If God made everything, then God made hell too, didn't he? Why is God referenced with the pronoun he in the first place? Jesus talked about loving thy neighbor. Why can't you show your neighbor's love, all of your neighbors on this planet? Why can't you put your God-given brain and heart together and learn to empathize with all people and all creatures of this earth? Are they not your neighbors? Are they not deserving of love? I like to be provocative and use words of my family's own self-proclaimed savior, and yet I find myself having more in common with Jesus than I do with most of my own family. I find my true self realizing that I don't need God to have morals. As I've gotten older, I also challenge the idea of heaven, or at least the idea of some place up just beyond the clouds where good people go when they die. In college, I minored in astronomy and learned what's really beyond the clouds. I recall a specific moment where my head swirled and my heart raced right there in the campus planetarium, the best classroom of all time, as I came to realize the truth about living on Earth, or as Carl Sagan calls it, the pale blue dot. As UUs, we talk about the interdependent web of all existence, and I like to talk about the scientific fact that we and everything around us on this planet, in this solar system, are made of stardust. I like to talk about the sheer coincidence of being alive on a rock, orbiting a star with other rocks, orbiting a galaxy with other stars, floating around in a boundless abyss. If I had walked the straight and narrow path prescribed to me, the younger me, I would have never had this soaring spiritual experience. And I likely would have never discovered my true self or had the courage to come out and show the world who I truly am. I saw an internet meme on our church's Instagram feed that really spoke to me. Across an image of a path through sunlit woods, it said, "Someone asked me, 'What is your religion?' I said, 'All the paths that lead to the light.'" My wife and I have walked a different path than any of those in our families, and I like to say we cut our own path through the bush. Anyone can travel on a paved path, but few can carve their own through the wild. I was incredibly hesitant and dismissive of walking through this church's doors over 5 years ago, only to identify and fall in love with the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism. As Reverend Barbara Wells Ten Hove explains, the principles are not dogma or doctrine, but rather a guide for those who choose to join and participate in Unitarian Universalist religious communities. This brings me to my final word from the title that I want to analyze, a word that I would argue is the most important in this title: with. Some synonyms for with are together, alongside, among, and including, and I want to close out this sermon by focusing on the most sacred word in this sermon's title: with. As much as I would rather have co-led this service with the Pride Community Center, this has been a great learning experience. I noticed that our worship assistant script did not include sharing our pronouns until I changed it last week to show that we are indeed a safe space for LGBTQ+ neighbors. I learned the full extent of what the LGBTQ+ is substituted for: lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, transqueer, transsexual, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, ally, pansexual. I learned that the Pride Community Center was founded in 2010 as an attempt to increase the collectiveness of LGBTQIAAP community in Central Texas. I realized a bit too late that our church did not show any public support through our social media on Transgender Awareness Day, as other UU churches had, which is Friday, November 20th. While I've been aware of some of the atrocities against queer communities, such as multiple murders of trans people in North Texas this year that I've seen in my news feed, I learned that it has been the deadliest year on record for the trans community. I learned that from 2017 to 2018, the Pride Community Center had to wind down and shutter its doors. Something else I learned, though, is that in the summer of 2019, Katie Stewart, an original founder of Pride Community Center, co hosted a July Pride potluck picnic with Unitarian Universalist Church of the Brazos Valley and gathered a leadership team around her to take the reins of the rebirth of the Pride Community Center. That leadership team is now in the process of finding its way through re-emerging and re-engaging with the fabric of Brazos Valley life so as to create a safe space for queer individuals. And we must continue to stand with them. With, together, alongside, among, including. These are words I want you to keep in mind as I bring this sermon to a close. I hope you learned with me as I have shared what I learned and expressed some of my own personal truths with you. It is my hope and my goal that all of our queer friends and family can finally be out with the straight in a community that is accepting, loving, understanding, and truly free and equitable for all. A community that is yet to exist until we make it together. May it be so.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our minds and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion each to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion each to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
And now, please join me in extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we gather together again. Thank you.
Benediction today is adapted from the words of Michael J. Crumpler and Alex Capitan. There are many truths about the word queer. Queer can mean strange, queer can be a slur, queer can be a self-identity in terms of sexuality or gender, queer can be an umbrella term for non-straight sexualities, queer can be a political framework, queer can even be an academic discipline called queer theory. Unitarian Universalism also teaches that there are many experiences of truth, and that all truths are not equally true. It rejects dogma and fundamentalism. It teaches that our paths aren't set for us. Our fate is not predetermined. Unitarian Universalism teaches that it doesn't matter what you call yourself. It matters how you live your life. At the core of Unitarian Universalism is the idea that my truth and your truth can both be true, even if they contradict each other. Some UUs worship the natural world. Some believe in reincarnation. Some speak to the ancestors. Some believe in the scientific method. Some follow Jesus or Muhammad or Gandhi. Some believe in a single God. Some believe in many gods. And some believe in no God. Somehow, not in spite of, but because of these many truths, we are Unitarian Universalists. This is our greatest uniqueness and our greatest strength. However, in order to tap into our superpowers of religion, we can't just coexist without meaningfully engaging with each other's truths. It's incredibly vulnerable to share the truths and practices that live close to our hearts. It can be incredibly uncomfortable to try and understand something foreign or embrace the fact that something that feels so constricting or painful to you makes another person feel freer. Yet to me, this is what it means to be Unitarian Universalist. It's only by taking these risks that we can tear down the walls between us, challenge what we have been served up by mainstream culture, and truly be in relationship with one another. In a 6-3 decision on July 15th, 2020, the Supreme Court upheld our Unitarian Universalist values that LGBTQ plus community Americans have the same inherent worth and dignity as everyone else. As Unitarian Universalists, these decisions are heartening and encouraging, however small it might be. This historic ruling says that LGBTQ plus people are and should be protected from discrimination at work under federal law. Our nation has much to do to dismantle both legal and cultural systems of discrimination, because while many people now have legal protection from discrimination at work, discrimination is still possible in stores, restaurants, and a wide range of public accommodations. When we act for justice, we are truly living into our Unitarian Universalist values. The Supreme Court ruling on July 15th is an important one for all. No one's gender, sexuality, race, nationality, ethnicity, or physical ability should prevent anyone from the right to employment, housing, healthcare, education, or public accommodations. Let us find solace in these beautiful words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., inspired by the 18th century abolitionist minister Theodore Parker. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Together, we can queer our faith and choose a different path toward justice, toward healing, toward life. Go in peace.